Welcome back. Analysts say it's among the biggest pipeline deals in history. Russia and China have signed a $400 billion 30-year gas deal. The deal made between Russia's Gazprom and China National Petroleum Corporation will allow Russia to build a pipeline originating in Siberia to ultimately pump 38 billion cubic meters of natural gas to China every year. To discuss more, we're again joined by our panel. Chris Chevis is with me in the studio. He's a political scientist at the RAND Corporation. Vasily Kashin, a senior research fellow from the Center for Analysis and Strategies and Technologies. He joins us from Moscow. And from Beijing, we have Zhou Jingxing. He is a counselor at the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Thanks to all of you again for being with us. Vasily, I just want to get your response to what Christopher was saying just a moment ago, that China is a rising power, and in some respects, Russia is not exactly a rising power, it could be a declining power.
Well, I would say that every major power in the world is currently declining when compared to China, because China is obviously the fastest growing major power in the world. During the last 15 years, Russia enjoyed generally quite a good economic growth, but we need to remember that Russian development model is like more or less maybe comparable to development model of countries like Australia. For the foreseeable future, it will be based on export of various raw materials, and raw materials are needed where a large-scale manufacturing activity is taking place, and it is taking place primarily in Asia and first of all in China. That actually means that the rebalancing of the whole Russian external trade and external economic relations is inevitable, and Russia will be more and more oriented towards China and dependent on China. In this case, I don't really see very significant limitations to deepening our partnership. Of course, Russia and China are not ready to form a real military alliance, because both countries deny any necessity of such alliances. But but in the longer term, we have unlimited potential for cooperation, and if under certain circumstances in the longer perspective, the alliance is quite possible. It will require some changes in the some basic changes in the current policy doctrines from both sides.
Okay, let's go to Beijing, to Zhou Jingxing. Let's talk gas right now, about this huge deal signed between the two countries, as we've been reporting, $400 billion over 30 years. It's been 10 years in the making. We saw that great photo op of the two leaders, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, knocking back vodka shots as the deal was announced. Who got the better deal here?
Well, I would say that both countries got the good deal. You know, the deal is, when you have a deal, it means that it is acceptable to both sides. So I think both China and Russia will come out as winners. And in the short term, it will meet the needs of Chinese economic and social development, and it will also meet the needs of the Russians' needs to export its natural gas to the rest of the world. And China is in need of clean energy, and of course, natural gas is a very important form of that. So, and also in the long term, and this deal, I think, will help further cement the foundation, especially the economic foundation of the two countries. So I think that there is actually a great potential for the economic cooperation between the two sides, and this is just an example of it.
Okay, spoken like a diplomat. Christopher, when Washington looks at this deal, it came at a very opportune time for Russia, at a time when Washington is trying to isolate Russia, trying to get its European allies on board as well. So to what extent does that undercut American motives and what it wants to do?
I think it undercuts American motives, but I definitely agree that this is an opportune moment for Russia to sign a deal like this, which is why I think that, Russia, we don't have the details, of course, of what price was finally agreed. But my guess is that Russia would probably have been pushing pretty hard right now to get a deal of this kind, given the questions that have arisen about the security of its gas markets in Europe as a result, of course, of its very destabilizing policy that it's been pursuing in Ukraine. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is an opportune moment for Russia, which tells me that probably Russia got the short end of the stick.
The other point, of course, is that I understand this was very hard bargaining. I mean, this deal did take 10 years, and I guess Russia needed the deal more than China.
I think that goes without saying. Certainly right now, Russia needed the deal more than China.
Okay. Xi Jinping, what do we make of the fact that these two countries, in signing this deal, also announced that they're going to pay for this deal in their own currencies? They're not going to be using the dollar.
Well, I think that is a natural outcome of the economic development of China, and also the natural development of the closer relationship between China and Russia. So Chinese economy is developing very fast, just a little faster than some of the world countries. And the Chinese currency naturally will one day become an important currency in the world. So I think this is one of the many steps in that direction. So I think that it is very important for us to note this fact, but it is also very important not to read too much into this.
Okay, Vasily, when we look at a deal of this kind, of course, it grabs the headlines, but these two countries have been cooperating on other projects as well, haven't they? They are involved in the construction of this canal in Nicaragua, something that will be an alternative to the Panama Canal. And China has also announced that it will be building a deep-sea port, ironically, in Crimea.
Yes, Chinese investors have already expressed their interest in Crimea, and China will participate also in building this big strategic bridge from mainland Russia to Crimea across Kerch Straits, which is also a multi-billion-dollar project. China has some agricultural investment in Crimea. In fact, China even used to have some close ties with some enterprises of Crimean defense industry complex when the peninsula belonged to Ukraine, so that probably also will continue. So yes, I think China will play important role in development of Crimea. Just like China today has rather active economic ties with Abkhazia, for example, which is a former region of Republic of Georgia, which declared independence. They have frequent business delegations there that's developing quite fast. The Chinese are using this kind of opportunities, which is very good for both sides.
Right, and Xi Jinping, are we also going to see more cooperation between China and Russia in the geopolitical sphere or sector, if I could call it that? We see that Russia and China have strategically voted along the same lines, say, for instance, when it came to Security Council votes at the United Nations, especially when it concerned sanctions against Syria, also on the Iranian nuclear issue.
Well, certainly international and regional issues is a very important area for China and Russia and other countries to cooperate with each other. And as permanent members of the UN Security Council, according to the Charter, the Security Council shoulders the primary responsibility for international peace and security. And of course, naturally, China and Russia are working very closely on these issues. And it just so happens, I think, that these two countries have similar or identical views on the Iranian nuclear issue and also on the Syrian issue. So, and that is why that they voted how they voted. And I think that on the part of China, at least we made the decision to vote on the two sets of issues based on the merits and demerits of the matters concerned, rather than looking at how that matter is related to a certain country.
Okay, Christopher, is there a big diplomatic hill for the United States to climb here, to reach consensus with its partners on the Security Council so it can get its agenda moving forward?
I think that there are a lot of challenges on the Security Council, but I think that has more to do with the difficulties in Russia's relationship with Europe and the United States right now than with Sino-Russian relations. And again, I mean, I think I'd like to emphasize the extent to which there are challenges ahead for the Sino-Russian relationship, including cooperation on the Security Council. We've seen cooperation on Iran, on Syria, even on Libya, several issues over time. That's nothing new. But one thing that is new is it seems that Russia has much less respect for the international rule of law than it did in the past. And that's obviously something that's very important to China. So I think that if that Russian policy of destabilization and risk-taking continues, it's actually going to be more difficult for them to cooperate than in the past.
But I guess ultimately all countries, whether it be Russia, China, or the United States, will act in their own interests.
Yes, and it depends on to what extent they think it's important for them that their own interest is to act in accordance with international law.
Okay, that's where we are going to have to leave it. Gentlemen, thanks to all of you for joining us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and story ideas to theheat@cctv-america.com. And now you can listen to CCTV America programs 24/7 from anywhere in the United States by simply calling 231-460-1199. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.